In the shadows between healing and harm lies a thin line drawn in blood. Some cross it for power, others for profit. Few return. The frontier town sleeps beneath a shroud of mountain mist, oblivious to the corruption festering within its pristine clinic walls. Here pain has become currency, suffering an investment opportunity, death an acceptable loss. They thought she would remain silent when they stole her research. They expected gratitude when they offered redemption. They never imagined she would become the fire that would consume their empire of lies. Truth has a cost, justice demands payment and revenge. Revenge burns everything. It touches the guilty and the innocent alike. When the powerful bury their sins in white coats and medical jargon, only the courage of one woman stands between salvation and destruction. Some flames aren't meant to die. They're meant to cleanse. The scalpel slipped from Dr. Eleanor Morgan's fingers clattering against the metal tray. 35 years old, and her hands were shaking like an old woman's. "Damn it," she whispered, glancing around her cramped Boston clinic to ensure no one had witnessed her moment of weakness. Outside winter rain lashed against the windows, matching her dark mood. 6 months since she'd abandoned her position at Harvard Medical School. 6 months since Professor Williams had stolen her research on nerve regeneration therapy and claimed it as his own. 6 months since the academic board had labeled her too ambitious and unsuitable for academic collaboration. When she'd fought back, Eleanor flexed her fingers, willing them to steady. A framed degree hung crooked on the wall, her doctorate in surgical medicine. What good was brilliance when the men in power saw it as a threat? The desk bell chimed with an arriving telegram. Another pharmaceutical sales pitch, most likely, but the sender's name made her pause. Dr. Nathaniel Blackwood, Director, Blackwood & Sons, Sanitarium, Silver Springs, Colorado. She opened it with careful fingers. Dr. Eleanor Morgan, your reputation precedes you. Your work on nerve regeneration techniques was groundbreaking, regardless of whose name ultimately appeared on the publication. I am building something revolutionary at Blackwood Sanitarium. We need minds like yours, brilliant, uncompromising, and unafraid of breaking convention. I offer you the position of Chief of Medicine, complete research freedom. Double your current salary. A cottage on the sanitarium grounds. In Colorado, your intelligence will be valued, not feared. Consider this possibility, Dr. Nathaniel Blackwood. Attached was a pamphlet showing a gleaming modern sanitarium nestled among Colorado's famous pine trees. Eleanor stared at it for a long moment. Dr. Morgan, her assistant poked her head in. Your 4 o'clock canceled. That's your last appointment today. Eleanor nodded absently, still staring at the telegram. That night in her modest apartment, Eleanor researched Blackwood Sanitarium, established 5 years ago with private funding, modern equipment shipped from Europe, growing reputation for treating America's elite, and Dr. Nathaniel Blackwood, medical degree from Johns Hopkins, additional business education from Yale, returned to Colorado to revolutionize healthcare. The next day brought another telegram, then a request to meet Blackwood's representative in Boston. The man was handsome with aristocratic features and perfect manners. He spoke passionately about bringing world-class medicine to the American frontier and recognizing talent regardless of gender or background. "Oh, no, your research approach was brilliant," he said, leaning forward over tea. "The old guard at Harvard never appreciated what they had in you." "How does Dr. Blackwood know about that?" Eleanor asked cautiously. The man smiled. "He makes it his business to know about exceptional talent, especially when that talent has been mistreated. Come to Colorado. Dr. Morgan help him build something revolutionary." 2 weeks later, Eleanor stood at the entrance of Blackwood Sanitarium. The pine-scented air was cool against her skin, so different from Boston's oppressive city atmosphere. The building itself was impressive, 3 stories of red brick and white columns, perched on a hillside overlooking the small frontier town and its famous mineral springs. A young nurse greeted her. "Dr. Morgan, I'm Sarah. Dr. Blackwood asked me to show you around before tonight's welcome dinner." The tour confirmed everything Blackwood's representative had promised. Operating rooms with equipment Eleanor had only read about, private patient suites that resembled luxury hotel rooms, a research wing with its own dedicated staff. And this will be your office, Sarah said, opening a door to reveal a corner space with large windows overlooking pine-covered hills. Eleanor set down her bag, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in months. Perhaps this was her second chance. That evening, Blackwood Sanitarium's top medical staff gathered in the main dining room for Eleanor's welcome dinner. Blackwood was even more impressive in person, tall, impeccably dressed, commanding the room with practiced ease. He introduced Eleanor to specialists from every department, each offering polite smiles that rarely reached their eyes. "And this is our major investor," Blackwood said, steering Eleanor toward a stocky man in his 40s, James Hammond of Hammond Pharmaceuticals. Outer Hammond assessed Eleanor with calculating eyes. "Ah, the brilliant Dr. Morgan Blackwood has spoken highly of you. I trust you'll find our facilities adequate for your research." "More than adequate," Eleanor replied. "I'm impressed by what Dr. Blackwood has built here." As servers circulated with wine, Eleanor slipped away to the veranda for air. Through the partially open door, she overheard Blackwood and Hammond speaking in low voices. "Is she everything you promised?" Hammond asked. "Absolutely, top of her class. Innovative research approach. And that scandal at Harvard means she has nowhere else to go. Perfect for our purposes. The board wants results. Blackwood Project. Prometheus needs to move forward. These trials are costing us millions. With Morgan's research background, we'll accelerate the timeline, and her name adds scientific credibility to our operation. The investors will be pleased. She seems principled." "Will that be a problem?" Blackwood laughed. "Everyone has a price, Hammond. She's been humiliated, her career derailed. She'll be so grateful for this second chance, she won't look too closely at the details. And if she does..." The conversation shifted as they moved deeper into the room. Eleanor stood frozen, wine glass cold in her hand. The familiar sensation of betrayal washed over her. She'd been a fool to believe Blackwood's promises. This was not about her talent. She was just another asset to be exploited. She needed to leave. Tonight, before getting entangled in whatever Project Prometheus was, Eleanor slipped back inside, searching for the exit, when a commotion erupted at the entrance. Emergency staff rushed in, faces grim. "Dr. Blackwood, emergency, 14-year-old girl, severe head trauma from a riding accident." "She's crashing." Blackwood frowned. "Family. Local mining. Family from a settlement outside town. Financial status." The nurse hesitated. "None to speak of, sir." "So," Blackwood's expression hardened. "Stabilize her for transfer to the county physician. We're not equipped for charity cases." Eleanor stepped forward before she could stop herself. "Head trauma, I'd like to assess the patient." Blackwood looked irritated but nodded. "Very well, since it's your specialty." In the emergency department, chaos reigned. At the center lay a teenage girl, skin ashen against bloodied sheets. A quick assessment confirmed the worst: depressed skull fracture, increasing intracranial pressure, pupils uneven and sluggishly responsive. "She needs immediate surgery," Eleanor announced. "The pressure on her brain is critical." "I've already ordered transfer to the county physician," Blackwood replied smoothly. "She won't survive the transfer," Eleanor countered, checking the girl's vitals. "The pressure is dangerously elevated. We need to operate now." An elderly doctor stepped forward, his hands visibly trembling. "I'm Dr. Harrison, neurosurgery," but he held up his shaking hands apologetically. "Dr. Morgan, while your concern is admirable," Blackwood said, "this patient cannot afford our services. The county physician is better equipped for such cases." Eleanor stared at him incredulously. "Better equipped? You just showed me state-of-the-art neurosurgical equipment, and we're talking about a child." The girl's vitals began to deteriorate further. There was no time for debate. "I'll perform the surgery," Eleanor announced. "I'm qualified in neurosurgical procedures." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "This is highly irregular for your first day." "Then fire me tomorrow," Eleanor snapped, already moving to prepare. "Dr. Harrison, will you assist your experience?" "My steady hands." The old doctor nodded, relief visible on his lined face. For the next 4 hours, Eleanor worked with methodical precision, relieving the pressure on the girl's brain, removing bone fragments, repairing damaged tissue. The old doctor proved invaluable, his knowledge compensating for his physical limitations. When they finally closed, Eleanor was exhausted but satisfied. The girl was stable against the odds she would likely recover. As Eleanor scrubbed out, Blackwood appeared beside her, face unreadable. "Impressive work," he said coolly. "Though in the future I expect you to respect our sanitarium's policies regarding non-paying patients. I didn't come to medicine to watch children die over payment policies." Eleanor replied, matching his tone. "Idealism is a luxury. Dr. Morgan Blackwood Sanitarium is a business. Remember that." He walked away, leaving Eleanor to wonder again if she'd made a terrible mistake coming here. At dawn, Eleanor checked on her patient, finding her stable but still unconscious. The monitors showed improving intracranial pressure, a good sign. She adjusted the bandages and turned to leave. "You saved her life." Eleanor startled at the deep voice. In the doorway stood a man she hadn't seen before, tall, broad-shouldered, with intelligent eyes and several days' stubble. His clothes were simple but clean, his demeanor vigilant. "Are you family?" Eleanor asked. "Her brother." He approached the bed gently, taking the girl's hand. "Daniel Grant. And you're the new doctor. Everyone's talking about Eleanor Morgan." "How is everyone talking about me already?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Small town, big surgery. Word travels." He studied his sister's face. "They said she would have died without your intervention." "She's not out of danger yet," Eleanor cautioned, "but the initial signs are positive." Grant nodded, then said quietly, "You should know that Blackwood isn't pleased. You've disrupted his carefully curated system. Dixon. By saving a patient who can't pay, can't advance his reputation, and has no social connections to exploit." Grant's eyes met hers. "Blackwood Sanitarium doesn't typically welcome patients like my sister." Eleanor frowned. "What do you know about Dr. Blackwood?" "Enough to be careful." Grant reached into his jacket and withdrew a small journal. "Whatever brought you to Silver Springs? Dr. Morgan, be wary of Blackwood and Project Prometheus. The truth has many faces here." Before Eleanor could question him further, Grant placed the journal in her hand. "If you truly care about patients, you'll look at this, but be careful who you trust." He turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you for saving Emma. Not everyone here would have." After he left, Eleanor stared at the journal, turning it over in her hand. First the overheard conversation, and now this mysterious warning. What had she gotten herself into? Pocketing the journal, Eleanor made a decision she would stay at least long enough to understand what was happening at Blackwood Sanitarium. And to ensure her patient recovered, Eleanor spent her first official day meeting with department heads and settling into her new office. Dr. Harrison, the elderly neurosurgeon who had assisted her, stopped by mid-afternoon. "I wanted to thank you," he said, lowering himself carefully into a chair. "Not many would have taken that risk on their first day." "I didn't see it as a risk," Eleanor replied. "Just medicine." Harrison smiled sadly. "Medicine has become a complicated business at Blackwood. There was a time when Dr. Blackwood shared your perspective." "Now," he shrugged, "what changed him?" "Success, money, Hammond's influence." Harrison glanced at the door to ensure it was closed. "Be careful, Dr. Morgan. Blackwood brought you here for a reason, and I doubt it was your surgical skills, impressive as they are." That night in her new cottage on the sanitarium grounds, Eleanor opened Grant's journal. It contained dozens of notes, patient observations, pharmacy inventories, correspondence excerpts, and buried within disturbing patterns, patients diagnosed with conditions more serious than their symptoms warranted, unnecessary surgeries, unexplained deaths followed by substantial donations to the sanitarium, and references to something called Project Prometheus, a clinical trial that seemed to exist off the official records. A knock at her door made Eleanor jump. She quickly closed the journal and went to answer. Sarah, the nurse from yesterday, stood in the hallway, nervously glancing over her shoulder. "Dr. Morgan, I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but..." She hesitated. "Dr. Harrison asked me to give you this." She handed over a folder. "He said you'd understand." The folder contained more patient files, cases similar to those in the journal. "What is this about, Sarah?" The young nurse bit her lip. I shouldn't say more, but watch out for the new pain management protocol, especially with Project Prometheus. Not everything is as it seems. Before Eleanor could press further, Sarah hurried away, leaving Eleanor with more questions than answers. She returned to the journal, renewed determination driving her as she dug deeper into the notes. Something was very wrong at Blackwood Sanitarium, and somehow she was now part of it. 2 days later, the girl Emma finally regained consciousness. Her recovery was remarkable, cognition intact, despite the severe trauma. Eleanor was checking her reflexes when Daniel Grant appeared. "The nurses say it's a miracle," he said, watching his sister respond to Eleanor's tests. "Not a miracle, just good medicine. She's young, which helps. The brain has amazing plasticity at her age." Grant studied Eleanor. "Did you look at the journal?" She nodded almost imperceptibly. "I have questions." "Not here," he murmured. "My cabin. Northern edge of town, past the old church tonight." As dusk fell, Eleanor rode her newly acquired horse along winding mountain trails until she found the address, a rustic wooden cabin set back among pine trees. Despite its isolation, the cabin was well maintained with warm light spilling from the windows. Grant answered her knock, immediately ushering her inside. The interior surprised her, walls lined with bookshelves, a desk covered with medical journals and equipment that looked like it belonged in a research lab, not a remote cabin. "You're a doctor?" Eleanor asked, noting a framed medical degree. "Was neurosurgery like you?" Grant gestured for her to sit, until I asked too many questions about Project Prometheus. "What exactly is Project Prometheus?" Grant's expression darkened. "Officially a revolutionary pain management protocol developed by Blackwood and Hammond Pharmaceuticals. Actually a highly addictive opioid derivative being tested on poor illiterate patients from mining settlements." He opened a journal showing her notes on patients with disturbing symptoms: severe respiratory depression, neurological damage, seizures. The drug creates dependency almost immediately. Grant explained withdrawal is excruciating, and when patients can't pay for more, they're simply discharged. Many die, others will do anything for another dose. Eleanor felt sick. Why isn't this being reported? Blackwood pays off officials. Those who can't be bought are misled with falsified data. The sanitarium presents one face to authorities and wealthy patients, and another to the desperate and poor. "Well, how are you involved?" Grant's face hardened. "I was Blackwood's star neurosurgeon. He recruited me after I returned from serving as a field surgeon in the war. I noticed discrepancies in patient records, medications being administered that weren't documented. When I investigated, I found Project Prometheus." He poured them both tea from a battered pot. I confronted Blackwood. "The next day I was accused of malpractice, a surgery gone wrong. Evidence, fabricated witnesses paid off. My medical license suspended pending investigation." "Yet you're still in Silver Springs. Why not leave?" Grant's eyes met hers. "Because people are still dying, because no one else was fighting back." He gestured around the cabin. "I've spent the last year gathering evidence, building a case. There are others at the sanitarium who help staff who've seen too much to stay silent. Like Dr. Harrison." Grant nodded. "He taught me everything I know about neurosurgery. Now his hands shake too badly to operate, so Blackwood keeps him around as a figurehead. But Harrison sees everything." Eleanor thought of the files, the patterns of abuse. "What's the end game?" "If this drug is as dangerous as you say, it will never receive approval." "It doesn't need official approval. Hammond has distribution channels throughout the Western Territories. Even a year of underground sales would generate millions before authorities catch on. By then, they'll have moved to the next scheme." Grant leaned forward. "This is why Blackwood brought you here. Your nerve regeneration research. They want to adapt it to mask the drug's neurodegenerative effects, make it seem safer than it is." The pieces clicked into place. Eleanor's research, altered for this purpose, could indeed help conceal the most damaging effects of the drug. "Why are you telling me this? How do you know I won't go straight to Blackwood?" "Because you operated on my sister when sanitarium policy said to transfer her. Because you're asking questions already." Grant's gaze was unflinching. "And because I've researched you too, Dr. Morgan. What happened at Harvard wasn't your fault. You stood up for the truth, then I'm hoping you'll do the same now." Eleanor considered her options. She could leave, return to Boston to her tiny clinic and shattered career, or she could stay and fight from the inside. "What do you need from me?" she finally asked. Relief flickered across Grant's face. "Access information about Project Prometheus's current phase, and eventually your testimony along with ours. I'll need to get closer to the project first. Gain Blackwood's trust. That's dangerous. So is doing nothing." Eleanor stood, decision made. "I'll contact you when I have something useful." As she reached the door, Grant said quietly, "Be careful who you trust. Dr. Morgan Blackwood has eyes everywhere." Riding back to the sanitarium, Eleanor felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Purpose, the anger that had been smoldering since her humiliation at Harvard Medical, now had a focus. This time she wouldn't be silenced. The next day, Blackwood called Eleanor to his office. "I've been reviewing your performance," he said, lounging behind a desk that probably cost more than her annual salary in Boston. "Impressive work with the head trauma case. The girl will fully recover." "All indications point that way," Eleanor replied neutrally. "Good, very good." He studied her. "I have a proposal, a research opportunity I think will interest you." He slid a folder across the desk. "Project Prometheus. Our most cutting-edge initiative." Eleanor opened the folder, skimming its contents. The official documentation painted Project Prometheus as a revolutionary pain management therapy. "We're entering Phase 3 trials," Blackwood continued, "but we've noticed some concerning neurological side effects in a small percentage of patients. Your background in nerve regeneration could be invaluable in addressing these complications." "I see," Eleanor said, careful to keep her expression neutral. "And these side effects, how severe are they?" "Manageable with the right approach." Blackwood waved dismissively. "Nothing that should derail the project. The potential benefits far outweigh the risks." "I'd need to review the complete trial data before making any recommendations." "Of course, you'll have access to everything you need." Blackwood smiled, all charm now. "This could be revolutionary, Dr. Morgan. Your name on a breakthrough pain management protocol, redemption, after what happened at Harvard. Redemption sounds appealing." Eleanor admitted, allowing a hint of ambition to color her tone. Let him think she was motivated by vindication. "Excellent. I'll have Sarah show you to the Prometheus research wing tomorrow." Blackwood stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "I knew you were the right choice for this, Eleanor. Together we'll make medical history." As Eleanor left his office, an unsettling thought occurred to her. Gaining access to Project Prometheus had been almost too easy. Was Blackwood testing her, or was he really so confident in his power that he didn't see her as a threat? Either way, she was now inside the project that Grant had warned her about. The real challenge would be gathering evidence without raising suspicions and determining who else at Blackwood Sanitarium could be trusted. That evening, a note was slipped under her door from an unknown sender. "Be careful with Sarah. Not all allies are what they seem." The next morning, Eleanor entered the Prometheus Research Wing, a secure facility on the sanitarium's lowest level. Sarah met her at the entrance, using her key to grant them access. "Dr. Blackwood said to give you full access to the research data," Sarah said, leading her to a workstation. "How long have you worked on Project Prometheus, Sarah?" Eleanor asked casually. "Since it began, I was one of the first nurses Blackwood hired when the sanitarium opened." "You must have seen a lot of changes." A shadow crossed Sarah's face. "More than I expected when I took the job." The research database contained hundreds of patient files, far more than Grant's journal had revealed. As Eleanor dug deeper, the true nature of Project Prometheus became clear. The drug called NP-370 was indeed remarkably effective at pain management, but its side effects were catastrophic. Rapid dependency, severe withdrawal symptoms, and cumulative neurological damage with prolonged use. Most disturbing were the test subject demographics. Over 90% were from poor mining settlements and immigrant communities, people with limited education, no understanding of clinical trials, often desperate for any medical care. "These consent forms," Eleanor said, examining a document. "Do the participants understand what they're agreeing to?" Sarah hesitated. "They're told it's a new medicine for pain. That's all. And these patients who dropped out of the trial," Eleanor pointed to several files marked discontinued participation. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. They didn't drop out. They died or became too damaged for useful data. A chill ran through Eleanor. Does everyone on staff know what's happening here? The full scope. No, most doctors see only their piece treating a specific side effect, monitoring for particular symptoms. Few connect the dots. But you have, Sarah's eyes darted nervously. I've seen enough to be careful and enough to know we need someone like you. She straightened as another staff member entered the lab. I'll check back later, Dr. Morgan. Sarsanan. Alone with the data, Eleanor worked methodically, copying key files to her journal while appearing to analyze the research. The deeper she dug, the worse it became. Project Prometheus wasn't just exploiting the vulnerable. It was systematically concealing deaths, falsifying results, and preparing for large-scale production of what amounted to a designer street drug. And her research, the work that had been stolen from her, was being adapted to mask the most damaging effects, just as Grant had warned. Over the next 2 weeks, Eleanor established a routine days at the sanitarium, earning Blackwood's trust as she appeared to embrace Project Prometheus evenings, spent analyzing the real data. Occasional clandestine meetings with Grant at his cabin, compiling evidence and building their case. As they worked together, Eleanor found herself drawn to Grant's quiet integrity. Unlike the ambitious doctors she'd known in Boston, his concern was solely for the patients. He'd given up everything, career, reputation, comfort, to expose the truth. Why did you become a doctor? She asked him one night as they organized evidence. Grant was silent for a moment. My parents died when I was 17. Cholera, the town had no doctor, no medicine. I watched them suffer, unable to help. His eyes met hers. I promised myself no one would suffer that way if I could prevent it. What about you? My brother was a doctor, Eleanor said softly, brilliant, dedicated. He died in a riding accident during my final year of medical school. Finishing what he started felt like keeping him alive somehow. Their shared sense of purpose created a bond that deepened with each meeting. For the first time since her humiliation at Harvard Medical, Eleanor felt understood. And something more, a connection that went beyond their common cause. At the sanitarium, Eleanor's reputation grew as she treated patients with genuine care while maintaining her cover on Project Prometheus. Dr. Harrison became a mentor and ally, guiding her through Blackwood's politics while sharing his vast medical knowledge. Blackwood was a good doctor once. Harrison told her during a rare quiet moment, idealistic like you, but ambition corrupted him. Now he sees patients as commodities and medicine as a business. And Hammond, a businessman playing at medicine, dangerous combination. As Eleanor navigated this complex environment, she became aware of the sanitarium's factions. Those loyal to Blackwood and the profit model, those who suspected something was wrong but stayed silent for job security, and a small group who quietly resisted treating patients regardless of ability to pay. Documenting the truth behind Project Prometheus, Sarah straddled these worlds, assisting Eleanor while maintaining her position in Blackwood's inner circle. The nurse's true allegiance remained unclear, sometimes providing crucial information, other times suspiciously absent when sensitive matters were discussed. Grant's warning about Sarah echoed in Eleanor's mind. Not all allies are what they seem. One morning, Eleanor arrived at work to find the sanitarium buzzing with excitement. Blackwood had called an all-staff meeting to make an important announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, beaming at the assembled staff, "I'm pleased to announce that Project Prometheus has been fast-tracked for special approval. In just 4 weeks at our 5th anniversary celebration, we'll unveil NP-370 to the world." Applause erupted, though Eleanor noticed Dr. Harrison and several others remained stone-faced. Government health officials, pharmaceutical representatives, and press will all be present. Blackwood continued, "This will put Blackwood's sanitarium and American medical research on the global map." After the meeting, Blackwood pulled Eleanor aside. "Your contributions have been invaluable. The neural protection protocol you developed has virtually eliminated the most concerning side effects." Eleanor forced a smile. "Just applying existing research in a new context." "Too modest. You'll be prominently featured in the presentation, Vindication for What Happened at Harvard." As Blackwood walked away, Eleanor felt a knot form in her stomach. 4 weeks until the drug would be presented as a breakthrough. 4 weeks to gather enough evidence to stop it. That night she rode to Grant's cabin, breaking several speed limits in her haste. 4 weeks, she told him, pacing across his living room. We don't have enough evidence yet to convince authorities. Grant's expression was grim. We need internal documents proving Blackwood and Hammond knew about the deaths and samples of the actual drug for independent testing. The samples I can get from the lab, but the documents would be in Blackwood's private office, which is accessible only from his quarters. Grant finished. We need someone with access. Eleanor thought for a moment. Sarah, she's Blackwood's head nurse. She has access to his office. Grant frowned. I'm not sure we can trust her. Do we have a choice? The next day, Eleanor cautiously approached Sarah when they were alone in the Prometheus lab. Sarah, how much do you know about what's really happening with Project Prometheus? The nurse tensed. What do you mean? The unreported deaths, the falsified consent, the plan to distribute the drug regardless of safety approval. Sarah's eyes widened. How do you... I've seen the real data, and I'm working with others to expose it. Eleanor took a calculated risk, including Grant. Sarah's face paled. Dr. Grant is still involved. Blackwood thinks he's given up. Far from it. We're building a case, but we need proof that Blackwood and Hammond knowingly concealed the deaths. Those records would be in Blackwood's private office. Could you access it? Sarah hesitated. Maybe. But if I'm caught, I know I'm asking a lot, but patients are dying. Sarah Moore will die if NP370 reaches the market. The nurse was silent for a long moment. My brother was a Project Prometheus patient. She finally said early trials. He died during withdrawal. Blackwood listed it as heart failure. Her eyes hardened. I'll help you, but not just for evidence gathering. I want them to pay for what they've done. As the 5th anniversary celebration approached, Eleanor Grant and their small network of allies worked frantically to build their case. Sarah provided access to Blackwood's private office, retrieving damning emails discussing acceptable casualties and strategies to circumvent regulatory oversight. Eleanor secured samples of NP370 for independent testing by contacts at Boston Medical, who still trusted her. 4 days before the ceremony, their evidence was nearly complete. Grant arranged a meeting with a journalist from a major newspaper and a senior health ministry official, both scheduled to attend the unveiling. Once they see our evidence, they'll have to act, Grant said as they finalized their presentation in his cabin. Blackwood and Hammond will be finished, and Project Prometheus with them, Eleanor added, feeling the first glimmer of victory. That night, as Eleanor rode back to her cottage, Sarah intercepted her path. Face panicked. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Harrison's been taken to emergency. He collapsed during rounds. Eleanor rushed to the sanitarium, heart pounding. She found Harrison in intensive care, his vital signs plummeting despite aggressive treatment. What happened, she demanded of the attending physician, appears to be poison, probably ingested within the last 2 hours. Poison? That's impossible. Dr. Morgan, Harrison's voice was barely a whisper. He beckoned her closer. Not accident, they know about you. Grant, save your strength, Eleanor urged, taking his frail hand. No time, letter my office bottom drawer. His breathing became labored. Be careful, Sarah. Sarah, what about her? But Harrison's eyes fluttered closed as alarms blared. Despite the team's efforts, the elderly doctor died within the hour. Devastated, Eleanor slipped into Harrison's office. In the locked bottom drawer, she found an envelope addressed to her. Inside was a letter and a small notebook. Dr. Morgan, if you're reading this, my suspicions were correct. I have monitored Project Prometheus since its inception, documenting what I could. Blackwood suspects I know too much, and I have seen how he deals with threats. The notebook contains more evidence, the original drug formula, unaltered trial results, and financial records showing where the profits are destined. This will complete the case you and Grant are building. I have known about your collaboration from the beginning. An old man notices things others miss. You have brought hope back to the sanitarium, however briefly. Be wary of who you trust. Sarah reports to both sides to Grant because of her brother's death, but to Blackwood because he has leverage over her. Finish what we started, with respect and hope. Dr. Harrison Eleanor stared at the letter, grief giving way to determination. She pocketed the notebook and headed for the exit, needing to warn Grant immediately. As she rounded the corner, Blackwood appeared flanked by security guards. "Dr. Morgan, just the person I wanted to see." His voice was ice. Security found something interesting during a routine scan of the Prometheus lab research materials copied to an external device. "Care to explain?" One guard held up her journal. "She'd gotten careless, left it connected too long. I was analyzing the data more thoroughly." Eleanor improvised, "The sanitarium network is sometimes slow." Curious then that the journal also contains notes exchanged with Grant. "A man who has sworn to destroy this sanitarium and my reputation." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "I can explain." "No need. Your actions speak for themselves." Blackwood nodded to the guards. "Take her to the isolation room. We'll decide what to do with her after the ceremony." As the guards seized her arms, Eleanor caught sight of Sarah watching from the nurse's station, her expression unreadable. Had she been betrayed, or was there still hope? The guards escorted Eleanor to the basement beyond even the Prometheus lab, to a reinforced door marked storage. Inside was a small room with a hospital bed, monitors, and no windows. "You'll remain here until Dr. Blackwood decides your fate," one guard informed her before locking the door. Alone in the isolation room, Eleanor assessed her situation. The room was clearly designed to hold problematic patients or staff. No telegraph, no way to contact Grant or warn him that their operation was compromised. And somewhere above, Harrison lay dead, murdered for helping them. Eleanor methodically examined every inch of the room, looking for weaknesses or tools. The medical cabinet yielded basic supplies, but nothing useful for escape. The air vent was too small to crawl through. The door was solid steel with a heavy lock. She was considering whether she could overpower whoever brought her food, when she noticed something odd about the wall behind a storage cabinet. The paintwork was slightly different, newer. Pushing the heavy cabinet aside, she discovered a sealed maintenance door, likely from the original building before renovation. Using a metal clipboard, Eleanor pried at the door until it grudgingly opened, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel. Emergency lamps cast an eerie glow along the passageway as she crept forward, listening for any sound of pursuit. The tunnel eventually led to a grate opening onto the sanitarium's rear grounds. Night had fallen, making it easier to slip past guards and scale the perimeter fence. With no horse and no means of communication, Eleanor's options were limited. Grant's cabin was miles away through mountain roads, but she had to warn him. Keeping to back trails, she began the long walk, every shadow making her jump. 2 hours later, exhausted and scraped from falling in the dark, Eleanor reached Grant's cabin only to find it engulfed in flames. Fire brigades surrounded the property, hoses trained on the blaze, but it was clearly too late. The structure was collapsing in on itself, years of research and evidence disappearing into ash and smoke. "No," Eleanor whispered, staggering closer. "No, no, no." A firefighter intercepted her. "Ma'am, you need to stay back." "Was anyone inside?" Eleanor asked, dreading the answer. "No bodies found. Place was empty when we arrived." Relief flooded through her. Grant might still be alive. But where? As Eleanor backed away from the scene, she noticed a familiar horse tethered down the road. Sarah's bay mare. The nurse sat in the saddle, watching the flames, with an expression Eleanor couldn't decipher. Approaching cautiously, Eleanor called softly, "Sarah." The nurse startled, then dismounted. "Dr. Morgan, how did you want to escape?" "It doesn't matter. Did you betray us to Blackwood?" Sarah's hands gripped the reins tightly. "It's complicated. Harrison is dead. Grant's cabin is burning. I was locked up. Seems pretty straightforward to me." "I've been playing both sides," Sarah admitted, looking away. "Blackwood has leverage over me. My younger sister, he's keeping her treated at the sanitarium, addicted to NP-370 from early trials. Blackwood controls her supply. So you report to him?" "Yes, and to Grant. I've been feeding Blackwood just enough information to maintain trust while helping your cause. When I can..." "Why should I believe you now?" Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew Harrison's notebook. Because I took this from your pocket before the guards searched you, and because I know where Grant is hiding. The safe house was a small apartment above a general store in Silver Springs Old Quarter. Grant had established it months ago as a contingency plan, stocked with supplies, disguises, and a telegraph line not connected to any traceable networks. Sarah parked her horse several blocks away. I can't be seen with you. Blackwood is already suspicious. I told him I was going home after my shift. Why help us now? Your sister was dying anyway. The damage from NP370 is too extensive. Sarah's eyes glistened. Nothing left to lose. The apartment is above Wilcox's store. Grant should be there. Eleanor found the general store closed for the night, its entrance dark. The side door, however, was unlocked as promised. She climbed the narrow stairs, heart pounding, and knocked the pattern Sarah had described. The door opened a crack, then wider, revealing Grant, a pistol visible in his waistband. He pulled her inside, then embraced her with surprising intensity. Eleanor, thank God I thought they'd captured you. They did. I escaped. She returned the embrace, surprising herself with the intensity of her relief. I thought you were dead. The cabin. They came for me an hour after you left. I had emergency protocols in place, grabbed what I could and fled before they arrived. He gestured to a fireproof box on the table. Most of our evidence survived. Eleanor explained everything. Harrison's poisoning, his letter, her capture, and escape. Sarah's conflicted allegiance. I never fully trusted Sarah, Grant said grimly, but she's taken a definite risk helping you find me. What now? Eleanor asked. The ceremony is in 3 days. Most of our evidence is gone. Not gone, distributed. Grant opened the fireproof box, revealing journals and documents. Harrison and I created backups, multiple copies hidden throughout the sanitarium with trusted staff. Who else is involved? X-ray technicians, 2 ER nurses, a pharmacist. They've all seen enough to know something's wrong. He rubbed his eyes wearily. The challenge now is getting the evidence to the right people at the ceremony. We need to be there, but Blackwood will have security watching for us. Unless we give him something else to worry about. Eleanor said, an idea forming. Sarah said Blackwood doesn't know you escaped the cabin fire. He might assume you died in it. Which gives us an advantage. Grant nodded, following her thinking. He'll focus on containing you, not looking for me. Exactly. He'll enhance security around the Prometheus lab in his office. But the ceremony itself in the main atrium might have vulnerabilities. For hours they strategized, examining sanitarium blueprints Grant had obtained, identifying potential entry points and escape routes. The plan that emerged was dangerous but possible. Grant would enter the sanitarium through the service entrance, disguised as maintenance staff. Eleanor would allow herself to be recaptured the day before the ceremony, becoming the focus of Blackwood's security concerns. Meanwhile, their network of allies would gather the distributed evidence and arrange for it to reach the health ministry official attending the event. It's risky? Grant warned, if Blackwood realizes you've escaped and returned voluntarily, he'll assume I'm planning something, which is exactly what we want. His attention on me means less scrutiny elsewhere. Grant studied her with newfound respect. You're remarkably calm about putting yourself in danger. Eleanor thought of Harrison, of the patients who had died in Project Prometheus trials, of her own career destroyed by men like Blackwood. I'm tired of watching powerful men destroy lives without consequences. She said simply, whatever happens, at least we fought back. The next morning, Eleanor approached the sanitarium's main entrance, head held high despite her exhaustion. As expected, she was immediately surrounded by security who escorted her directly to Blackwood's office. He sat behind his desk, examining her with cold curiosity. I'm impressed, Dr. Morgan. Most people who escape don't return voluntarily. I came back for my patients. She replied, the partial truth serving her purpose. Whatever you think of me, I won't abandon them. How admirable. And Grant, I assume you contacted him. Okay. Grant is gone, Eleanor said, allowing genuine grief into her voice. The cabin fire was quite effective, yes. Blackwood smiled thinly. A regrettable accident. Faulty wiring is so dangerous in these old structures. Rage flared in Eleanor's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. Let him believe his lie. What happens now? She asked. Now you'll be closely monitored until after the ceremony? I can't have you disrupting our big moment. He nodded to the guards. Take Dr. Morgan to the secure ward. Full surveillance, no outside contact. The secure ward proved to be a locked wing on the third floor, ostensibly for psychiatric patients, but clearly serving as a detention area. Unlike the basement room, this one had a window barred, but offering a view of the sanitarium grounds. Throughout the day, various staff members checked on her, a nurse taking vital signs, an orderly delivering meals, a custodian mopping the floor. Each interaction seemed routine, but Eleanor recognized their faces from Grant's descriptions of their allies. Tiny acknowledgments passed between them, a lingering glance, a quietly murmured word. The network was active. The plan was proceeding. That evening, Sarah arrived with medication. As she checked Eleanor's blood pressure, she whispered, "Everything's set for tomorrow. Grant is in position." The evidence, distributed to 5 different staff members. They'll pass it to the health official during the reception. After Sarah left, Eleanor lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, mentally reviewing every aspect of their plan. So much could go wrong. Blackwood might change the ceremony location. Security might catch Grant. The health official might dismiss their evidence, but it was their only chance to stop Project Prometheus before the drug destroyed more lives. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear. Eleanor was given a sanitarium gown and told she would watch the proceedings via closed-circuit screen. 2 guards remained stationed outside her door. At noon, the broadcast began. The sanitarium atrium had been transformed, with flowers, banners, and seating for hundreds. Government officials, press representatives, and medical professionals filled the space, all gazing expectantly at a stage where Blackwood and Hammond stood beaming with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blackwood began, "today marks not only Blackwood Sanitarium's 5th anniversary, but a breakthrough in pain management that will change medicine forever." As he launched into a presentation about Project Prometheus's development, Eleanor watched intently, searching the crowd for Grant. She spotted several of their allies, the X-ray technician serving champagne, the pharmacist chatting with a health official. Blackwood's presentation continued, masterfully spinning the narrative of scientific breakthroughs and rigorous safety protocols. Then came the moment they'd been dreading. "And now I'd like to acknowledge the brilliant mind whose nerve regeneration research made this breakthrough possible." Blackwood gestured to a screen displaying Eleanor's credentials. "Unfortunately, Dr. Eleanor Morgan cannot join us today due to illness, but her contributions were invaluable." Eleanor's stomach clenched at seeing her name associated with this deadly drug. On screen, the health official, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, was accepting a champagne flute from the X-ray technician, who leaned in to whisper something in her ear. The official's expression remained impassive, but she discreetly pocketed something small, likely a notebook. "And now," Blackwood announced, "the moment you've all been waiting for, the official unveiling of NP-370. He pulled a cord, revealing a display case containing vials of amber liquid. Applause filled the atrium. "With proper approval, we expect NP-370 to be available within months," Hammond added, stepping forward. "Blackwood Sanitarium will be the exclusive provider, initially with wider distribution to follow." The health official raised her hand. "Dr. Blackwood, I have some questions about the trial protocols, specifically regarding patient demographics and reported side effects." A flicker of annoyance crossed Blackwood's face. "Of course, we can discuss technical details after the ceremony." "I'd prefer to address them now," the official insisted. "Our ministry has received some concerning information." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Hammond and Blackwood exchanged glances. Suddenly, the video feed cut out. Eleanor jumped to her feet, pounding on the door. "Hey, what happened?" No response from the guards. Eleanor pressed her ear to the door, hearing raised voices in the corridor. Something was happening. The plan was either working or falling apart catastrophically. She searched the room for anything that could serve as a weapon or tool. Finding nothing useful, she resigned herself to waiting, straining to hear any clue about what was transpiring elsewhere in the sanitarium. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. The uncertainty was maddening. Finally, the door swung open. Sarah stood there, face pale but determined. "We need to move, now." "What happened?" Eleanor demanded as Sarah led her through eerily empty corridors. "Everything and nothing," Sarah replied cryptically. The health official started asking questions. Blackwood cut the ceremony short. "There's chaos in the administration wing, people destroying documents, security everywhere. The evidence delivered. But there's a complication. Grant has been captured." Eleanor's heart sank. "What are you where?" "The Prometheus lab. He was trying to secure the original drug samples as final evidence. Blackwood's men caught him. They took the service stairs to the basement level. As the doors opened, shouting echoed down the corridor coming from the direction of the Prometheus lab. "You should go," Eleanor told Sarah. "You've risked enough." Sarah shook her head. "My sister died last night. Nothing left to lose, remember." They crept toward the lab, passing frightened staff members hurrying in the opposite direction. Through the lab's glass walls, Eleanor could see Grant on his knees, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. Blackwood stood over him, rage distorting his usually composed features. Hammond paced nearby, barking orders to security. Two guards flanked Grant, one pressing a gun to the back of his head. "We need a distraction," Eleanor whispered. Sarah pointed to the fire alarm on the wall. "That will trigger emergency protocols. All electronic doors will unlock, including the pharmaceutical storage." "Which contains what exactly?" "Anesthetic gas, among other things." Eleanor nodded. "Get to the storage room. I'll trigger the alarm. When the doors unlock, release the gas, but make sure you're wearing a mask." Sarah disappeared down a side corridor as Eleanor approached the fire alarm. Through the lab windows, she could see Blackwood gesturing angrily, while Grant remained defiant. Despite his position, Eleanor pulled the alarm. Immediately, sirens wailed throughout the building. Flashing lights activated. The lab doors unlocked with an audible click as emergency protocols engaged. Taking advantage of the moment's confusion, Eleanor burst into the lab. "Fire in the east wing. Everyone needs to evacuate." The guards hesitated, looking to Blackwood for instructions. That split second was enough for Grant to throw himself sideways, knocking one guard off balance. Chaos erupted. The second guard fired the bullet-shattering equipment instead of finding its intended target. Grant tackled him from below. Hammond bellowed for more security. Blackwood lunged for an internal phone. And then a hissing sound filled the room as misty vapor began pouring from the ventilation system. Sarah had succeeded. "Anesthetic gas!" Eleanor shouted, "Everyone out!" Staff fled, pushing past each other in panic. The security guards, untrained for such a scenario, abandoned their posts. Hammond, closest to the door, escaped into the corridor. Blackwood, however, remained fury overriding self-preservation. He grabbed a scalpel from a nearby tray and lunged at Grant, who was struggling to his feet. Eleanor intercepted Blackwood, blocking his arm. They grappled briefly before she twisted away medical training, giving her the advantage as she used his momentum against him. The gas was thickening, making vision difficult and breathing labored. Eleanor felt her consciousness starting to fray at the edges. "Grant!" she gasped. "We need to go." Now, together, they stumbled toward the exit. Blackwood's enraged shouts behind them, becoming increasingly slurred as the gas took effect. In the corridor, emergency lighting pulsed red. Through the haze, Sarah appeared wearing a surgical mask and carrying two more, which she handed to Eleanor and Grant. "The building's evacuating," she reported. "Police and fire brigades are responding." "Evidence?" Grant asked, his voice muffled by the mask. "The health official has everything." She was already calling the ministry when the alarm sounded. "Shooter." They made their way upward against the flow of evacuating staff and patients heading for Blackwood's office. "We need the server data," Eleanor explained to Sarah. "Everything else can be contested, but his private communications will be irrefutable." Blackwood's office was deserted, the evacuation having cleared even this executive floor. Grant went straight to the desk using lock-picking skills Eleanor hadn't known he possessed to open the secure drawer. "Got his private journal," he announced after a tense minute. "Let's go." As they turned to leave, Hammond appeared in the doorway, a gun in his trembling hand. "Step away from the desk," he ordered. "Whatever you've taken, return it." Now behind him more figures appeared, security personnel, their weapons also drawn. "It's over, Hammond," Eleanor said calmly. "The health ministry has the evidence. The police are already here responding to the alarm." "Nothing is over until I say it's over." Hammond's composure had shattered, revealing the desperate man beneath the executive facade. "Do you have any idea what's at stake? Millions in projected revenue, years of development, and dozens of lives." Grant added, "People who died for your profit margin, acceptable losses in any medical advancement." Hammond's gun remained trained on them. "Now step away from the desk." Eleanor assessed their options. The window behind Blackwood's desk. 3 floors up, not survivable fight. They were outnumbered and unarmed. A commotion in the corridor behind Hammond drew his attention. Momentarily, police officers had arrived, responding to the alarm. Hammond turned back to Eleanor, desperation in his eyes. "Last chance," he hissed. "Drop your weapon." A police officer appeared behind the security team, weapon drawn. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Hammond, realizing he was cornered, swung his gun toward Grant. Eleanor lunged forward instinctively. The gun discharged with a deafening crack. Searing pain blossomed in Eleanor's shoulder as she collided with Grant, knocking him aside. They fell together as more shots rang out, police returning fire. When the echoes faded, Hammond lay motionless on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. The security team had dropped their weapons, hands raised in surrender. Grant cradled Eleanor against him, face ashen. "You're hit. How bad?" She assessed the wound with clinical detachment despite the pain. "Through and through, missed the artery. I'll live." Police swarmed the room, securing the scene. Medical staff arrived moments later, attending to Eleanor's injury. As they prepared to transport her to the county hospital, Eleanor grabbed Grant's hand. "The evidence is safe," he assured her. "It's over, Eleanor. They can't hide anymore." But as she was wheeled away, Eleanor caught a glimpse of Sarah speaking urgently to a police officer, pointing down the corridor in the direction of the Prometheus lab. Blackwood was still unaccounted for. 3 days later, Eleanor was released from the county hospital, her shoulder bandaged and arm in a sling. She was driven to a hotel where Grant waited. The authorities had established it as a temporary safe location while the investigation proceeded. "Any word on Blackwood?" she asked as Grant helped her into a chair. "Nothing. He disappeared during the evacuation. International alerts are active." "But May," Grant shrugged. "He had contingency plans, offshore accounts. The authorities think he may have fled to Canada or Mexico." Eleanor absorbed this, and the investigation, moving quickly. Hammond's death accelerated things. The pharmaceutical board seized all Project Prometheus materials. "The health ministry is interviewing former patient staff members. Your testimony is scheduled for tomorrow if you're up to it." She nodded, wincing as the movement jarred her injured shoulder. "I'll be ready." "What about Blackwood's sanitarium?" "Temporarily closed pending investigation. Most staff have been cleared to work elsewhere. Those directly involved with Project Prometheus are being questioned." A knock at the door made them both tense. Grant checked the peephole, then relaxed, opening the door to admit a police detective and the health ministry official from the ceremony. "Dr. Morgan," the official greeted her. "I'm Dr. Wilson from the health ministry. I want to personally thank you for your courage in exposing this situation." The detective was more businesslike. "We have a few more questions about the evidence you and Dr. Grant gathered, specifically about the formula for NP-370. Eleanor frowned. "What about it?" The detective placed a folder on the table. "According to our analysis, the formula bears striking similarities to a nerve regeneration therapy being developed at Harvard Medical several years ago. A project originally headed by Dr. Williams, the same professor who stole your research." Grant looked at Eleanor, confused. "I don't understand. How would Blackwood get access to that research?" The detective opened the folder, revealing photocopies of old research notes. "Because NP-370's original formula wasn't developed by Dr. Blackwood or Hammond Pharmaceuticals. According to records we've recovered, the base formula came from a different researcher altogether." He slid a photograph across the table, a young man in a lab coat smiling at the camera. "Dr. Thomas Morgan, The detective said, "Your brother, Dr. Morgan." Eleanor stared at the photo, blood rushing in her ears. "That's impossible. My brother was a trauma surgeon. He died in a riding accident 8 years ago." "Your brother had a dual specialty, trauma surgery and neuropharmacology. He was consulting on a pain management project funded by private investors, including a younger Nathaniel Blackwood. 6 months before his death, Dr. Morgan halted his participation, citing ethical concerns about addiction potential." The detective turned to another document. After his death, his research notes disappeared from Harvard. Medical Blackwood acquired them, somehow possibly through Dr. Williams, who was also involved peripherally with the project. Eleanor's mind raced, connecting dots that had been there all along: her brother's increasingly erratic behavior before his death, his cryptic warnings about dangerous people, the accident that had never made sense, a careful rider on a clear day, a single horse accident on an empty trail. "They killed him," she whispered, "because he wouldn't continue the research." "We're investigating that possibility," the detective confirmed. "The timing is suspicious, certainly. And the research Williams stole from me?" Eleanor continued, pieces falling into place. "My nerve regeneration work was an extension of my brother's approach. I didn't know about his pain management research, but I was working with the same neural pathways. Blackwood needed my research to complete what my brother refused to finish." Grant took her hand. "That's why Blackwood recruited you specifically. Not just for your skills or to silence a potential whistleblower, but because you held the missing piece of the formula." The health ministry official leaned forward. "Dr. Morgan, this connection makes your testimony even more crucial. It establishes a pattern of behavior stretching back years, theft, coercion, and possibly murder to develop this drug." Eleanor felt as though she was seeing the past 8 years of her life through a different lens: her brother's death, her own research, the sabotage of her career, Blackwood's convenient offer when she was at her lowest point. None of it coincidental. All carefully orchestrated. "I'll testify," she said, a new determination hardening her voice. "About everything. But Blackwood is still out there. And if he's willing to kill for this formula once—" "We've arranged protection," the detective assured her, "for both of you." After they left, Eleanor sat in silence, staring at her brother's photograph. Grant gave her space, making tea and quietly organizing documents for the next day's testimony. "He was trying to stop them," Eleanor finally said, "and I never knew. All these years I've been carrying on his legacy without realizing the most important part." Grant sat beside her. "Now you can finish what he started, not just by continuing his research the right way, but by stopping those who corrupted it." Eleanor nodded, resolve strengthening. Tomorrow she would testify. She would tell the world what had happened at Blackwood Sanitarium, and somehow she would find justice for her brother. But as night fell over Silver Springs, another part of the story was unfolding across town. In a private room at a shadowy clinic near the mountains, Dr. Blackwood leaned over an unconscious Sarah, syringe in hand. "You should have stayed loyal," he murmured, injecting the amber fluid, pure NP-370R, into her IV line. "Now you'll serve a different purpose. A demonstration of what happens to those who betray me." He pocketed the empty syringe and donned a surgical mask obscuring his features before stepping into the corridor. By morning, he would be on a private train to California, then onward to a country with no extradition treaty, with offshore accounts containing millions and backup copies of the NP-370 formula. He could start again elsewhere. Blackwood Sanitarium might be finished, but Project Prometheus would rise again, and Eleanor Morgan would learn that some fires cannot be extinguished so easily. The next morning dawned gray and misty, matching Eleanor's somber mood as she prepared to testify. Her shoulder throbbed despite the pain medication. A constant reminder of how close she'd come to death, Grant drove her to the government building. In Silver Springs, administrative district security officers flanking them front and rear. News reporters clustered at the entrance cameras aimed at arriving officials. "Ready?" Grant asked as they pulled up. Eleanor nodded, squaring her shoulders despite the pain. "For my brother, for Harrison, for all of them." Inside, the hearing room was already packed. Health officials, police investigators, medical board representatives, and journalists. Eleanor was led to a witness table microphone positioned before her. Grant took a seat in the front row, offering a reassuring nod. For 3 hours, Eleanor testified in meticulous detail the recruitment by Blackwood, the discovery of Project Prometheus, the falsified records and concealed deaths. Her voice remained steady even as she described Harrison's murder and her own shooting. When she reached the revelation about her brother's connection to the original formula, murmurs swept through the room. To be clear, the health minister said, "You believe Dr. Blackwood recruited you specifically because of your relationship to the original researcher, Dr. Thomas Morgan." "Yes, my nerve regeneration work was built on the same principles my brother had pioneered. Blackwood needed it to perfect NP370, making it more addictive while masking the most severe side effects." "And you believe your brother was murdered for abandoning the project?" "The timing and circumstances suggest it. The accident that killed him never made sense." Now, knowing what Blackwood is capable of, it fits a pattern. After her testimony, other witnesses followed sanitarium staff, former patients, financial experts tracking the money trail. By late afternoon, the health minister announced a full criminal investigation into Blackwood Sanitarium Hammond Pharmaceuticals and everyone connected to Project Prometheus. The evidence presented today suggests systematic abuse of vulnerable patients, falsification of medical records, and criminal negligence resulting in multiple deaths. She stated, reporters scribbling furiously as she spoke. "We will pursue justice for the victims and ensure such abuses cannot occur again." Outside the hearing room, Grant waited with the detective from the previous day. "Powerful testimony," the detective said, "but we've had a development." Sarah was found unconscious at a private clinic near the mountain's NP370 overdose. "She's alive but in critical condition." "Blackwood," Eleanor said immediately, "he's still in Silver Springs?" "We think so." The clinic staff reported a doctor fitting his description, though he wore a surgical mask. Surveillance was conveniently disabled. "Is Sarah conscious? Can she tell us anything?" "Not yet, but we found this." The detective held up a plastic evidence bag containing a syringe. "It traces of NP370 plus something else. We're analyzing it now." Grant frowned. Why would Blackwood risk exposure just to attack Sarah? He could have fled immediately. "Revenge," Eleanor said, "and a message he's showing us he can still reach the people who betrayed him." A chilling thought occurred to her. "The sanitarium records, they contain staff addresses, don't they?" The detective nodded grimly. "We've already assigned protection to key witnesses, including both of you." He gestured to additional officers waiting nearby. "You'll have 24-hour security until Blackwood is apprehended." That night in another hotel room, they changed locations daily as a precaution. Eleanor couldn't sleep. Images haunted her brother's face in that photograph. Harrison's last moments, Sarah lying unconscious in a hospital bed. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Grant, who slept on the pull-out couch. At the window, she looked out over Silver Spring's misty mountains, lights from mining settlements glowing like fallen stars on the slopes. Her telegram device clicked with a message from an unknown sender. "Your brother also thought he could stop me. Visit Sarah at County Hospital Room 412 if you want to understand how this ends." Eleanor's hand shook as she read the message. Blackwood taunting her, challenging her to come to him. She glanced at Grant, still sleeping, then at the door where a police officer stood guard outside. Confronting Blackwood alone would be suicidal, but if she reported the telegram, he'd likely disappear again before they could catch him. Her brother had faced this same choice, she realized. Confronting dangerous people alone, trying to stop a dangerous drug from reaching the market. It had cost him his life. Eleanor made her decision. She wrote a message to Grant set to be delivered by the hotel clerk in 1 hour. "Blackwood contacted me, going to County Hospital Room 412. Alerted security to follow discreetly. Don't worry." Then she dressed silently, took her room key, and slipped onto the balcony. The drop to the lower roof was only about 10 feet. Her injured shoulder screamed in protest, but she managed the descent. Then the final jump to the ground. Eleanor hailed a carriage several blocks away, directing it to County Hospital. The driver gave her an odd look. It was nearly midnight, but complied without comment. County Hospital's night entrance was quiet, a board attendant barely glancing up as Eleanor entered. She took the stairs to the fourth floor, pulse pounding in her ears. Room 412 was at the end of a dimly lit corridor. Eleanor approached cautiously, noting the absence of police presence. Had Blackwood somehow arranged this bribe someone to clear the way? She pushed the door open slowly. Inside, machines hummed quietly, monitoring Sarah's vital signs. The nurse lay unconscious, pale against white sheets, multiple IVs running into her arms. There was no sign of Blackwood. Eleanor moved to Sarah's bedside, checking the monitors and IV medications with a professional eye. As she leaned closer, she noticed something off about the primary IV bag. The solution was faintly amber-tinted, not normal saline. With a surge of alarm, Eleanor examined the bag's label. The medication information had been altered. Someone had added something to Sarah's IV, likely more NP370. She was reaching to clamp the line when a voice came from behind her. "Predictable, just like your brother." Eleanor turned to see Blackwood emerging from the attached bathroom surgical mask, now removed, a syringe in his gloved hand. "You're killing her," Eleanor said, eyes on the syringe. "Demonstrating the product, actually NP370, creates absolute dependency. Sarah betrayed me for her brother, who was one of our early test subjects. Poetic that she'll die the same way he did. The authorities know you're in Silver Spring security. Are conveniently occupied with a disturbance on the ground floor. Amazing what money can accomplish in this country." Blackwood smiled coldly. "We have about 10 minutes before anyone notices. What do you want, Blackwood?" "Insurance." He gestured with the syringe. "Your final statement on camera admitting you falsified evidence against me and Blackwood's sanitarium due to professional jealousy? That's absurd. No one would believe it. They will when you flee the country immediately afterward, using the ticket and new identity I've arranged. Your disappearance will validate the confession." Eleanor noticed his camera on a nearby tray lens aimed toward them. "And if I refuse?" Blackwood held up the syringe. "This contains a lethal dose of NP370. I inject Sarah, then you too, more mysterious overdoses. Tragic but not suspicious in the current climate." Eleanor assessed her options. The call bell was out of reach. The door behind Blackwood was the only exit. Her injured shoulder limited her physically, but perhaps she could keep him talking. Play for time. "My brother figured it out, didn't he? What you were really doing with his research." Blackwood's expression shifted slightly. Thomas was brilliant but naive. He actually believed pain management should be about helping people, not profit. "So you had him killed." "A regrettable necessity. He threatened to expose everything just like you. The formula was too valuable to lose. And then you targeted me years later. My position at Harvard, Professor Williams, stealing my research, you orchestrated all of it." Blackwood shrugged. "Williams was easily manipulated with promises of acclaim and funding. Your research was the final piece we needed to perfect NP370. When you were discredited and desperate, I provided the solution. Simple strategy." As he spoke, Eleanor noticed movement in the doorway behind him, a shadow passing. Someone was in the corridor. Hope flared briefly. "What happens after tonight?" she asked, keeping him engaged. "You can't re-establish Project Prometheus in Colorado. There are territories with fewer regulations, less oversight. The formula is backed up in multiple secure locations. Within a year, production will resume under a different name. Thousands will die. Millions will find pain relief, and I'll become extremely wealthy." Blackwood checked his watch. "Enough talk. Your confession now, or Sarah dies before your eyes." Shubri Turtum. He reached for his camera with one hand, the syringe poised in the other. Eleanor made her move. Instead of reaching for the camera or the syringe, she grabbed the IV stand and swung it with all her strength. The metal pole struck Blackwood's arm, sending the syringe flying. The IV bags tore free fluid, spraying across the room. Blackwood recovered quickly, lunging for Eleanor with surprising speed. They crashed into the medical cart instruments, clattering to the floor. Pain exploded in Eleanor's injured shoulder as they grappled. Despite her injury, Eleanor fought with desperate intensity, medical training giving her knowledge of vulnerable points. She drove her knuckles into Blackwood's throat, making him gag and stumble backward. He recovered quickly, eyes wild with rage. You're just like your brother, too stubborn to know when you're beaten. Blackwood grabbed a scalpel from the scattered medical instruments. Eleanor backed away, searching frantically for a weapon or escape route. Her back hit the wall as Blackwood advanced, blade gleaming in the dim light. Suddenly, the door burst open. Grant charged in, tackling Blackwood with crushing force. They slammed into medical equipment, the scalpel skittering across the floor. Grant pummeled Blackwood with focused fury, each blow precise and devastating. Police officers flooded in, seconds later, weapons drawn. They pulled Grant off the now bloodied Blackwood, who lay dazed on the hospital floor. "You got my message," Eleanor gasped, clutching her re-injured shoulder. Grant's face was grim. "I was already awake when you left, followed you here." His eyes burned with intensity. "I almost lost you once, never again." As officers handcuffed Blackwood, the detective from earlier entered, surveying the chaos. "Dr. Blackwood," he announced formally, "you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Nurse Sarah Collins and Dr. Eleanor Morgan, conspiracy to commit fraud, criminal negligence resulting in death, and," he paused, checking his notes, "suspected involvement in the death of Dr. Thomas Morgan 8 years ago." Blackwood, blood streaming from his nose, laughed bitterly. "You have nothing on Thomas's death. Nothing that will stand in court." "Actually," the detective replied, holding up Blackwood's camera, "we have your confession. The recording was running the entire time." He turned to Grant and Eleanor. "Excellent work getting him to talk." Medical staff rushed in to attend to Sarah, replacing her contaminated IV with proper medication. Others examined Eleanor's reopened wound. "Will Sarah survive?" Eleanor asked as a doctor rebandaged her shoulder. "Too early to tell," the doctor replied, "but thanks to you, she has a chance." Blackwood, being led away, called back over his shoulder, "This changes nothing. The formula still exists. Others will continue what I started. You've won nothing." Grant moved to Eleanor's side, his hand finding hers. "He's wrong," he said quietly. "We've won everything that matters." 3 months later, Eleanor stood at her brother's grave in Boston, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone. The harsh winter had given way to spring, fresh green buds, softening the cemetery's stark lines. Grant waited respectfully a few paces away, giving her a private moment. "It's over, Thomas," Eleanor said softly. "Blackwood has been charged with your murder. The evidence was circumstantial, but combined with everything else, the prosecutor is confident of a conviction." "Shoo." She traced the engraved name with her fingers. "Your research has been reclaimed. I'm working with the health ministry to develop a non-addictive version of the pain management therapy, the way you intended it." Her shoulder had healed, though it still ached when rain threatened, a small price to pay for justice. Grant approached as she stood. "Ready?" Eleanor nodded, taking one last look at the grave. "He would have liked you." "High praise," Grant smiled. "The minister's waiting." "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely." At the health ministry headquarters in Denver, the minister received them in her office, various officials seated around a conference table. "Dr. Morgan, Dr. Grant." She greeted them. "We've reviewed your proposal for Blackwood Sanitarium." After Blackwood's arrest, the sanitarium had remained closed, its future uncertain as investigations continued. Patient records had been transferred, staff reassigned to other facilities. "The government is prepared to approve your application to reestablish the sanitarium under new management." The minister continued, "Your credentials are impeccable, and your conduct during the Prometheus scandal has earned significant goodwill." Eleanor exchanged glances with Grant. This was what they'd hoped for, but hearing it confirmed still seemed surreal. "However," the minister added, "there are conditions. The sanitarium must reserve 30% of its beds for patients who cannot pay. All research must undergo independent ethical review, and quarterly audits will be mandatory for the first 3 years. We accept all conditions." Eleanor replied without hesitation. "Those were already part of our operational plan." The minister smiled. "Then congratulations, the facility will reopen under your joint directorship in 60 days. Outside in the ministry's garden, Eleanor and Grant paused to absorb the magnitude of what had just happened. From exposing a scandal to running the sanitarium, Grant marveled, not the career path I expected. Are you having second thoughts? Eleanor asked. He shook his head, no. But it won't be easy rebuilding public trust after everything that happened there. We'll rename it. Eleanor decided Phoenix Medical Center. Grant raised an eyebrow. Using Blackwood's project name. Why? Because a phoenix rises from ashes, transformed like us, like the sanitarium. She smiled. And because every time Blackwood hears about our success from his prison cell, he'll know we took everything he corrupted and made it right. 1 year later, Phoenix Medical Center opened its doors. The building had been renovated, erasing the cold institutional aesthetic Blackwood had preferred in favor of natural light and healing spaces. Where the executive suites had once dominated the top floor, now a research center focused on ethical pain management therapy stood. On opening day, Eleanor and Grant welcomed their first patients, including many from mining settlements who had previously been exploited by Project Prometheus. Dr. Harrison's portrait hung in the main lobby alongside a memorial to those who had died in the original trials. Sarah was there too, still recovering from her ordeal, but determined to continue nursing. The NP370 had caused significant damage to her system, but with proper care, and the new, safer pain management protocols Eleanor had developed, she was slowly healing. As the day wound down, Eleanor found herself in her new office, once Blackwood's domain, now transformed into a warm, welcoming space. With her brother's photograph on the desk beside her medical degrees, Grant knocked on the open door. Last patient admitted, everything running smoothly. Hard to believe we actually did it, Eleanor said, looking out at the lights of Silver Springs twinkling below. Believed in it from the first day I saw you operate on Emma. Grant replied, joining her at the window. Some people are meant to heal others, to profit. You always knew which side you were on. A nurse appeared at the door. Dr. Morgan, there's a letter for you. She handed over an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed text. Congratulations on your opening. Enjoy it while you can. Some flames never truly die. An old friend. Eleanor showed it to Grant, whose expression darkened. Blackwood is in maximum security. He couldn't have sent this. No, Eleanor agreed. But remember what he said. Others will continue what I started. Project Prometheus had investors. Supporters we never identified. Grant took the letter, studying it. Should we be worried? Eleanor considered this, then shook her head. Vigilant, yes. Worried, no. She gazed out at the medical center they had built from the ashes of corruption. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. She placed the letter in her desk drawer and locked it. Threats could wait. Today was for celebrating what they had accomplished, a place of healing built on truth rather than profit. Come on, she said, taking Grant's hand. Sarah and the others are waiting to celebrate. As they walked through the halls of Phoenix Medical Center, Eleanor felt a sense of completion. Her brother's legacy secured Blackwood's corruption, exposed a new beginning forged from the darkest of endings. The flame of justice once lit would not be extinguished so easily. 6 months after the opening of Phoenix Medical Center, the mountain mists hung low over Silver Springs, shrouding the town in dreamlike stillness. Winter had arrived again, bringing snow-laden air and early sunsets that painted the mountains in shades of orange and gold. Eleanor sat across from the health minister in a quiet corner of the center's new cafeteria, steam rising from cups of coffee between them. Your quarterly reports are exemplary, the minister said, closing a folder embossed with the government seal. Patient outcomes exceeding expectations. Ethical protocols followed to the letter, and financial sustainability, despite the charity care requirements. We've been fortunate. Eleanor replied, the community has embraced us. More than embraced. There's talk of replicating your model in other Western territories. The minister stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Blackwood's trial begins next month. The prosecution has asked if you'll testify. Eleanor had been expecting this. Of course, whatever it takes to ensure he stays behind bars. It won't be easy. He's hired an impressive legal team. Some powerful people still support him. People who invested in Project Prometheus and lost millions when it collapsed. I'm not afraid of Blackwood or his supporters. The minister's expression turned grave. Perhaps you should be. Two potential witnesses have withdrawn their testimony after receiving threats. Another was involved in a suspicious carriage accident. Eleanor thought of the anonymous letter she'd received on opening day. Some flames never truly die. Are you suggesting we should be concerned about our safety? I'm suggesting caution. Blackwood operated with impunity for years because he cultivated powerful allies. Not all of them have been identified. After the minister departed, Eleanor found Grant in the research lab analyzing brain tissue samples from former NP-370 patients. Their recovery program had shown promising results, gradually weaning survivors off the drug while repairing neurological damage. The minister thinks Blackwood's network is still active. She told him, relaying the conversation. Grant's expression hardened. The anonymous letter. And more witnesses being threatened or harmed. He set down his microscope slides, rubbing tired eyes. I've heard rumors through my Army Medical Corps contacts. Someone's been asking questions about experimental pain therapies in California and New Mexico territory, describing something that sounds remarkably like NP-370. Blackwood said others would continue his work. Eleanor recalled, the formula exists in multiple locations. And we still don't know who all his investors were. That evening in the house they now shared overlooking the town, Eleanor and Grant reviewed security reports from the medical center. Since the threatening letter they'd implemented, enhanced measures, guards access controls, background checks for all new staff. Nothing unusual, Grant concluded after scanning the day's records. But the trial will change things. Once you testify, you'll be in the spotlight again. Eleanor gazed out at the misty valley town lights glimmering like fallen stars against the snow. I've been thinking about something. My brother's research to the original formula before Blackwood corrupted it. What if we could complete it the way he intended? A non-addictive pain management therapy. Exactly the core neurochemical approach was sound. It was Blackwood and Hammond who modified it to create dependency. Grant considered this. With your nerve regeneration expertise, it might be possible, but developing and testing would take years. We have years. Eleanor smiled. And the best research facility in the territory. Over the following weeks, they began preliminary work on what they called Project Renewal, redeveloping Thomas's original formula while treating former NP-370 victims. Each recovered patient provided valuable data for their research. Sarah, now working as their head nurse despite lingering effects from her overdose, became their first test subject. Her unique perspective as both a medical professional and a victim made her insights invaluable. The withdrawal is like being burned from the inside out, she explained during a research session. Not just physical pain, but a psychological certainty that only the drug will extinguish the fire. In our current treatment protocol, Eleanor asked, noting Sarah's response patterns. It helps the burning becomes bearable, but it never fully disappears. This was the challenge they faced, not merely masking pain, but addressing the fundamental neurological pathways that perpetuated it without creating dependency. As the date for Blackwood's trial approached, security concerns intensified. Grant insisted on accompanying Eleanor everywhere outside the medical center. The town sheriff maintained a visible presence around Phoenix Medical Center. 3 days before the trial, Eleanor received a telegram from the detective who had arrested Blackwood. Need you come to office immediately? Stop urgent development. Stop at the Silver Spring Sheriff's Office. The detective led them to a secure room. Spread across the table were crime scene photographs of a hotel room. Blood spattered across white walls, a body crumpled on the floor. One of our key witnesses, the detective explained grimly, former Hammond Pharmaceuticals executive who agreed to testify about the company's involvement in Project Prometheus, murdered last night. Eleanor studied the brutal images with clinical detachment, though her stomach churned. Professional hit, appears so execution style, but with evidence of torture first. Likely trying to determine what information he had provided to authorities. Any suspects? The detective slid a grainy surveillance photograph across the table. A man in a hat and mask exiting the hotel's service entrance. Can't make an ID with the mask, but the height and build. He hesitated. Match Blackwood. Grant finished examining the photo. But he's in custody. That's why we called you. This wasn't Blackwood, but someone wanting us to think it might be a message, Eleanor realized, to other potential witnesses, and possibly to you. The detective pushed forward a paper envelope. This was found on the victim's body. Through the paper, Eleanor could read the handwritten message, "Those who betray the phoenix will burn fire. Spreads fire, consumes. Fire remembers." An icy chill ran through her. Despite the heated room, the phrasing was too similar to the note she'd received to be coincidence. "We need to postpone your testimony," the detective advised, "until we can guarantee your safety." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "That's exactly what they want. Delay the trial, intimidate witnesses, let evidence grow cold." "Dr. Morgan, this is a professional killer, someone with resources and inside information. All the more reason to proceed. Blackwood must be convicted." She met the detective's concerned gaze. "Increase security if necessary, but I'm testifying as scheduled." Outside the sheriff's office, Grant pulled Eleanor aside, his expression troubled. "That was reckless. We should reconsider." "Iraram, would you back down," she challenged, "if our positions were reversed?" After a long moment, he sighed. "No, but I don't have to like it when you put yourself at risk." "It's not just about Blackwood anymore," Eleanor said, gazing at the mountain peaks visible in the distance. "It's about finishing what my brother started, standing against those who would sacrifice lives for profit." The next day, they implemented additional security measures at the medical center and their home. Grant contacted former colleagues from the Army Medical Corps with combat backgrounds, hiring them as supplemental security. That evening, as Eleanor reviewed her testimony notes, the telegraph clicked with a message from an unknown sender. Her heart raced as she read it. "Your brother made the same choice. Stop his courage cost him everything. Stop, reconsider while you still can stop." She showed the message to Grant, who immediately contacted the sheriff. Within an hour, deputies were tracing the message's origin. Sent from a telegraph office in Denver, the sheriff reported, "By the time we contacted authorities there, the sender was gone. But we have a description." The witness described a young woman in fashionable clothing, her face obscured by a heavy veil throughout. "Professional?" Grant muttered, "using a random civilian as a messenger." "We'll have deputies stationed at the courthouse tomorrow," the sheriff assured them. Every entrance covered armed guards, the works. That night, Eleanor barely slept, not from fear but from a growing resolve. Tomorrow would be more than testimony in a criminal trial. It would be a reckoning for her brother, for Harrison, for all those who had suffered under Blackwood's ambition. The Silver Springs courthouse stood in the town center, a stately wooden structure surrounded by newer government buildings. By 8 a.m., journalists crowded the steps, notebooks ready as they watched the main entrance where deputies had established a security perimeter. Eleanor and Grant arrived through a private entrance, escorted by armed deputies. The courtroom was already packed. Government officials, medical board representatives, families of Project Prometheus victims, and at the defense table, Nathaniel Blackwood. He had lost weight in prison, his tailored suits replaced by standard-issue clothing. Yet his posture remained proud, his gaze calculating as he surveyed the room. When his eyes met Eleanor's, a slight smile curved his lips. Not of greeting, but of challenge. The trial proceedings began with opening statements. The prosecutor outlined the case methodically: fraud, medical malpractice, criminal negligence resulting in death and murder. Evidence would prove, he promised, that Blackwood had orchestrated a massive criminal enterprise under the guise of medical research. The defense countered by portraying Blackwood as a visionary researcher whose work had been mischaracterized by jealous colleagues and overzealous authorities. Any deaths were unfortunate, but not criminal. They argued the expected risk of developing revolutionary treatments. When Eleanor was called to testify, she approached the witness stand with measured steps, acutely aware of Blackwood's gaze following her movement. After being sworn in, she faced the courtroom calmly, presenting herself as what she was: a doctor committed to truth and healing. For 2 hours, she testified about Project Prometheus, the falsified consent forms, the covered-up deaths, the deliberate addictive properties of MP370. She explained how her own research had been manipulated to conceal the drug's harmful effects. And what was Dr. Blackwood's response when you questioned these practices? The prosecutor asked. He made it clear that profit was the priority. Eleanor replied, patient welfare was secondary at best, irrelevant at worst. When she described her discovery of her brother's connection to the original formula, murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Dr. Blackwood recruited me specifically because of my relationship to my brother and his research. She explained, he needed my nerve regeneration work to complete what my brother had abandoned on ethical grounds. And do you believe your brother's death was related to his withdrawal from the project? Objection. Blackwood's lawyer jumped to his feet. Speculation. Sustained. The judge ruled the witness will refrain from conjecture about motives. The prosecutor nodded, adjusting his approach. Dr. Morgan, did the defendant ever discuss your brother's death with you? Yes. During our confrontation at County Hospital, he admitted that my brother's death was a regrettable necessity because he threatened to expose the project. Blackwood leaned forward, whispering urgently to his attorney, who again objected. Your Honor, any alleged statement made during a physical altercation cannot be considered reliable. The statement was recorded on Dr. Blackwood's own camera. The prosecutor countered, which was already submitted as evidence. The judge allowed the testimony to continue. When it came time for cross-examination, Blackwood's lawyer approached with predatory confidence. Dr. Morgan, isn't it true that you harbored professional resentment toward Dr. Blackwood due to your own career setbacks? No, I had never met Dr. Blackwood before he recruited me. Yet you were eager to believe the worst about his research based on unsubstantiated claims from a discredited doctor with a personal vendetta. I based my conclusions on evidence, patient records, laboratory data, witnessed events. The attorney changed tactics. Isn't it true that your relationship with Dr. Grant, a man with known animosity toward the defendant, has colored your professional judgment? Eleanor refused to be baited. My relationship with Dr. Grant began after I had independently verified the issues with Project Prometheus. For an hour, the defense attorney tried to undermine her credibility, suggesting professional jealousy, emotional instability following her brother's death, even romantic entanglement clouding her judgment. Eleanor remained composed, answering factually and calmly. When finally dismissed from the stand, she returned to her seat beside Grant, who squeezed her hand in silent support. The trial continued with technical witnesses, pharmaceutical experts, financial investigators, former sanitarium staff. By late afternoon, Eleanor and Grant were permitted to leave their security detail, escorting them back to Phoenix Medical Center. You were brilliant, Grant told her as they entered the safety of the medical center. Unshakable, Eleanor felt drained but satisfied. She had spoken the truth clearly and completely. Now justice would take its course. That evening, as they prepared to leave, Sarah appeared at Eleanor's office door, her expression troubled. There's a patient asking for you specifically, she said. An elderly woman who says she knew your brother. Did she give a name? Mrs. Winters. She seems quite frail but insistent. Curious, Eleanor agreed to see the woman before leaving. In a private consultation room sat a thin elderly lady, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, hands folded neatly in her lap. Dr. Morgan, she greeted in a wavering voice. You look so much like your brother. You knew Thomas. He treated my grandson 8 years ago, a special case. The boy had a rare condition causing chronic pain. Your brother was developing a new therapy. Her eyes grew distant with memory. He was such a kind man, spent hours explaining the treatment, making sure we understood. Eleanor felt a flutter of excitement. This was his pain management research. Mrs. Winters nodded. The first treatments were miraculous. My grandson could sleep through the night for the first time in years. But then, she hesitated. Dr. Morgan became concerned, said there were unexpected effects he needed to address before continuing. Did he explain what effects? Only that some patients were becoming too dependent, that he needed to reformulate. The old woman reached into her purse with trembling hands, withdrawing a worn envelope. He gave me this the day before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe until his sister came looking. Eleanor accepted the envelope with a sense of unreality. He knew I would come to Colorado. He said, "My sister follows the truth wherever it leads. One day it will lead her here." Mrs. Winter's eyes filled with tears. "The next day we heard about the accident. I've kept this safe all these years waiting." Inside the envelope was a small notebook and a handwritten letter. Eleanor recognized her brother's neat, precise script immediately. "Thank you," she whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "This means more than you can know." "Will you continue his work?" Mrs. Winters asked. "The real work, not what that man corrupted it into." "Yes, that's exactly what we're doing." After the elderly woman departed, Eleanor showed Grant the envelope's contents. The letter was brief but poignant. Thomas explaining his decision to halt the research, his suspicions about Blackwood, his determination to prevent the formula from being misused. The notebook contained his original research notes, unaltered by Blackwood's profit-driven modifications. "This changes everything," Grant said, scanning the pages. "With these notes and our current research, we could develop the treatment your brother originally envisioned." Eleanor felt as though her brother were suddenly present, guiding her path forward. "This is why I came to Colorado, not just to expose Blackwood, but to complete what Thomas started." That night, as they analyzed the newly discovered research, a breaking news telegram arrived. A key prosecution witness in Blackwood's trial had been found dead in his home, an apparent suicide. "Convenient timing," Grant remarked darkly. The next morning brought more disturbing news. 2 jurors had reported receiving threatening letters. The judge had ordered them sequestered for the remainder of the trial. When Eleanor arrived at the medical center, she found Sarah waiting anxiously in the lobby. "Someone accessed the research lab last night," she reported. "Security logs show a maintenance worker, but when I checked the schedule, no maintenance was authorized." They hurried to the lab where Grant was already reviewing workstations for tampering. Someone went through the project renewal notes. He confirmed copied research files, then attempted to erase the access logs. "Successfully?" Eleanor asked. "No. Our security protocols flagged the unusual activity, but they got what they came for: our current research data." Eleanor's mind raced. The trial, the threats to witnesses and jurors. Now it's all connected. Someone is trying to protect Blackwood while simultaneously continuing his work. "Kibrumite, we need to identify Blackwood's network." Grant insisted. "The investors, the collaborators. They're the ones behind this, starting with whoever has been sending the threatening messages." Eleanor pulled out the latest telegram, showing Grant. "The phrasing is specific about my brother making the same choice. Few people knew about that connection until the trial." "Someone with inside information?" Grant agreed. "Someone close to Blackwood." They spent the day enhancing security protocols while continuing their analysis of Thomas's research notes. The original formula was indeed promising, targeting specific pain receptors without creating the cycle of dependency that Blackwood had deliberately engineered. That evening, as they prepared to leave, Eleanor received another telegram from the unknown sender. "Your brother's research is incomplete. Stop, you will never succeed without missing components. Stop, perhaps we can help each other. Stop, they're monitoring us." Grant realized they know we have Thomas's notes. "And they claim there's missing information." Eleanor frowned. "A bargaining chip or a trap?" Eleanor telegraphed a response. "What missing components query?" The reply came immediately. "The enzymatic catalyst that prevents neurotoxicity. Stop without it. Your treatment will cause brain damage. Stop, meet to discuss terms. Stop, come alone to Old French Church at midnight. Stop, absolutely not," Grant said when she showed him the message. "Of course not," Eleanor agreed, "but we can set a trap of our own." They contacted the sheriff immediately, who assembled an undercover team. By 11:30 p.m., plainclothes deputies surrounded the church while others monitored nearby streets and buildings. Eleanor approached the church alone as instructed, though Grant and armed deputies remained in constant communication through hidden signals. The Gothic structure loomed against the night sky, its stone facade illuminated by moonlight, creating dramatic shadows. Inside the church was dimly lit by altar candles, the air heavy with incense. Wooden pews stretched toward an ornate altar, but the vast space appeared empty. "Hello," Eleanor called, her voice echoing among stone arches. "Dr. Morgan," the voice came from behind the altar. "How brave of you to come." A figure emerged from the shadows, A woman in her 50s, elegant in a tailored suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back severely. Eleanor recognized her immediately from pharmaceutical board meetings at Blackwood Sanitarium. "Dr. Chambers," she said, surprised, "you were on Hammond's regulatory team." Among other roles, Chambers approached with measured steps, her heels clicking on the stone floor. "I've been following your work with interest. Your brother was brilliant, as are you." "You knew my brother." "I supervised his original research before Blackwood became involved, before we understood its true potential." Eleanor tensed, aware of deputies moving into position throughout the church. "You were part of Project Prometheus from the beginning." "I was part of something visionary that politics and weak ethics constrained." Chambers' voice hardened. "Your brother lacked the courage to see it through. Will you make the same mistake?" "My brother recognized that the formula was being corrupted for profit, regardless of human cost." Chambers smiled coldly. "All advancement has a cost, Doctor. The question is whether the outcome justifies it. Prayer and mass addiction suffering death, these are justifiable. For a treatment that could revolutionize pain management worldwide, absolutely." Chambers withdrew a small metal case from her jacket. "This contains what you need, the enzymatic catalyst your brother developed before his departure, the missing piece for your project renewal." Through their signal system, Eleanor understood the deputies were now in position, 3 taps on a wooden pew from across the church. "Why would you help me?" Eleanor asked, stalling. "You're one of Blackwood's collaborators. Blackwood is finished. His usefulness ended when he grew careless enough to be exposed." Chambers set the case on a nearby pew. "But the project, the true vision, lives on through others with greater resources and discretion. The investors, visionaries who understand what most cannot, that progress requires sacrifice." Chambers' gaze was calculating. "Together we could complete what your brother began, develop a revolutionary therapy without government interference or ethical constraints. At the cost of how many more lives?" Chambers shrugged. "Casualties are inevitable in any war. We are fighting a war against pain itself." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "We're developing a treatment to help people, not to profit from their suffering." Disappointment flickered across Chambers' features. "Just like your brother, so much potential wasted on outdated morality." She sighed. "I had hoped you might be more pragmatic. Is that why you had him killed? Because he wouldn't compromise his ethics?" Chambers' expression revealed nothing. "Your brother made his choice, as you've made yours." She gestured to the metal case. "The formula is yours nonetheless. Consider it an investment in your future reconsideration. And if I turn it over to the authorities as evidence, you won't." Chambers smiled with chilling confidence. "Because without it, your project renewal will fail, and you won't sacrifice those patients currently suffering just to make a point." She glanced at her watch. "Now I believe our time is up." Suddenly the church doors burst open. Deputies swarmed in, weapons drawn. "Dr. Chambers, you're under arrest," the sheriff announced, approaching with handcuffs ready. Chambers appeared unsurprised, offering her wrist calmly. "On what charges exactly?" "Conspiracy to commit murder for starters. We've been monitoring your communications with the assassin who killed our witness." As deputies led Chambers away, she called back to Eleanor. "This changes nothing. Dr. Morgan, the network is vast. Others will continue what we started." Grant emerged from his hiding place, embracing Eleanor tightly. "Are you all right?" She nodded, still processing the encounter. "She knew my brother was involved from the beginning, and now she'll testify against Blackwood in exchange for leniency," the sheriff said, joining them. Her arrest could break the case wide open. Eleanor picked up the metal case Chambers had left behind. She said, "This contains the missing component for our research." "Could be a trap," Grant warned, "contaminated or dangerous." "We'll have it analyzed thoroughly before attempting any application," Eleanor agreed. "But if it's legitimate, then your brother left us the final piece we needed," Grant finished. "Through the most unlikely source." The following weeks brought significant developments. With Dr. Chambers' testimony, the prosecution's case against Blackwood strengthened dramatically. She implicated powerful figures in government and industry, revealing the full scope of the conspiracy. In the secure laboratory at Phoenix Medical Center, analysis confirmed that Chambers's gift was indeed the enzymatic catalyst referenced in Thomas's notes, the component that prevented neurological damage while maintaining pain relief. Why would she give us this? Grant wondered as they reviewed the analysis results. Even facing arrest, she could have withheld it as a bargaining chip. I think she believed I would eventually join their cause, Eleanor replied. That facing the same challenges my brother did, I'd make a different choice. She doesn't know you very well. Eleanor smiled. No, but she did give us the missing piece to complete my brother's work. With the catalyst incorporated, their reformulated therapy showed remarkable promise in laboratory testing. Unlike NP370, it provided effective pain relief without creating dependency or causing neurological damage. 3 weeks later, the jury returned with their verdict in Blackwood's trial, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, with additional cases pending for his role in Thomas's death and other murders connected to Project Prometheus. As Blackwood was led from the courtroom, his eyes locked with Eleanor's. No words were exchanged, but his expression conveyed both hatred and a grudging respect. He had underestimated her from the beginning, a mistake that had cost him everything. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Eleanor spoke briefly, dedicating the verdict to her brother's memory and to all victims of Project Prometheus. When asked about her future plans, she revealed the development of Project Renewal, an ethical pain management therapy based on her brother's original research. From tragedy, we're creating something that will truly help people, she told the assembled press. That's the legacy my brother deserved. 6 months later, Phoenix Medical Center hosted a medical conference unveiling the preliminary results of Project Renewal clinical trials. Doctors and researchers from across the Western Territories gathered to learn about the new therapy, which was showing remarkable efficacy without the catastrophic side effects of NP370. The trial participants report 80% reduction in chronic pain levels. Eleanor explained during her presentation, with no signs of dependency or tolerance buildup even after 3 months of continued use. In neurological effects, asked a neurologist from New York, follow-up examinations show improved neural pathway function rather than degradation. Grant replied, advancing to the next slide showing comparative brain tissue samples. The therapy appears to promote healing while managing pain. After the presentation, as attendees mingled during the reception, the health minister approached Eleanor with a proud smile. The ministry has fast-tracked approval based on these results. She announced Project Renewal will be available in public hospitals within 6 months. That's wonderful news, Eleanor replied, genuinely moved. Patients who've been suffering for years will finally have a safe option. Your brother would be proud, the minister said softly. You've transformed his vision into reality, despite incredible obstacles. Later that evening, Eleanor and Grant stood on the balcony of Phoenix Medical Center, overlooking the lights of Silver Springs. The air was crisp with winter stars brilliant in the clear mountain sky. It doesn't feel real, Eleanor admitted, leaning against the railing. After everything, the danger, the setbacks, the threats to actually succeed. Not just succeed, Grant corrected, transform pain management therapy for generations to come. I keep thinking about what Chambers said during her interrogation, that there are others who will continue Blackwood's work, that somewhere someone is still producing NP370. Grant put his arm around her shoulders. Probably true, but now there's an alternative, a better option that actually helps people instead of exploiting them. Is it enough? Eleanor wondered. To create something good without completely stopping the bad? It has to be, Grant replied thoughtfully. We can't control what others choose to do. We can only ensure that our own work reflects what we believe is right. Eleanor nodded, finding wisdom in his perspective. They had fought their battle, exposed corruption, and created something healing from the ashes of exploitation. If others continued the fight elsewhere, that was their choice to make. A week later, Eleanor visited her brother's grave again, this time placing not just flowers but a copy of the Project Renewal research publication beside the headstone. We did it, Thomas, she said softly. Your work lives on the way you intended it. People will be helped, not harmed. As she stood to leave, she noticed an elderly man watching her from a respectful distance. He approached, slowly leaning on a cane. "Dr. Morgan," he greeted her. "I hoped I might find you here today." "Do I know you?" she asked, not recognizing his weathered face. "No, but I knew your brother well. I was his research supervisor at Harvard before he began his private work." The old man gazed at the grave solemnly. "I read about your project renewal. Remarkable achievement. Thank you, it wouldn't have been possible without my brother's foundation." The old man nodded. "Thomas was brilliant, but more importantly, he was ethical. When he realized the potential for misuse, he tried to shut everything down." He sighed heavily. "I should have supported him more forcefully." Eleanor studied him with new interest. "You opposed the project's direction?" "I tried, but Blackwood had powerful backers. When Thomas died so suddenly," he shook his head sadly, "I knew it wasn't an accident, but I had no proof, and frankly, I was afraid. But you're speaking now, because you succeeded where I failed. You exposed the truth and reclaimed your brother's work." He reached into his jacket, withdrawing an envelope. "These are my personal notes from that period. Names, dates, meetings, everything I witnessed. Perhaps too late for Blackwood's trial, but perhaps useful in tracking those who remain free." Eleanor accepted the envelope, touched by this unexpected alliance. "Why now?" The old man smiled sadly. "Courage is contagious, Dr. Morgan. Seeing you stand against such powerful forces, it reminds an old man of duties too long neglected." After he departed, Eleanor opened the envelope, finding meticulously documented notes about meetings between Blackwood and various officials, business leaders, and foreign investors. Many names she recognized from Chambers' testimony. Others were new powerful figures, still untouched by the investigation. She telegraphed Grant immediately, "We may have more work to do." That evening they reviewed the notes together in their home, identifying connections to ongoing pharmaceutical projects in neighboring territories. "These operations have relocated," Grant observed, "but they're running the same playbook, exploiting regulatory loopholes, targeting vulnerable populations for trials." "Then we continue fighting," Eleanor said simply. "Share this information with authorities, track the network's activities, ensure project renewal reaches the communities they're targeting." "It never really ends, does it?" Grant sighed. "No," Eleanor agreed, "but neither does the good we can do." 1 year to the day after Phoenix Medical Center opened, Eleanor stood at a podium in the hospital's packed auditorium, unveiling the Thomas Morgan Memorial Research Institute, a new facility dedicated to ethical medical advancement, particularly focused on pain management and neural regeneration. "My brother believed that medicine should heal, not harm," she told the assembled guests and press, "that profit should never supersede patient welfare, that ethics cannot be compromised regardless of potential gain." She gazed across the audience, colleagues, patients, government officials, and in the front row, Grant, whose support had never wavered. "The flame of ethical medicine must never be extinguished," she continued, "even when threatened by those who would sacrifice healing for profit, even when the path forward seems darkest." As she spoke, Eleanor thought of all they had endured, the threats, the violence, the betrayals, but also the triumphs, the lives saved, the pain relieved, the journey from exposing corruption to creating something genuinely healing. "With the launch of this institute, we commit to continuing that flame, researching treatments that truly serve patients, training medical professionals who value ethics above expediency, and ensuring that the vulnerable are protected rather than exploited." After the ceremony, as guests toured the new facility, Grant found Eleanor standing alone in the research wing, gazing at the memorial plaque bearing her brother's image. "He would be proud," Grant said, joining her. "I think he would," Eleanor agreed, "not just of what we've built, but of how we built it." And what happens next? Chambers was right about one thing. Blackwood's network continues operating across borders. Eleanor smiled, taking his hand. "Then we continue too. The flame never dies, Grant. It just finds new ways to shine in the darkness." Outside, the sun broke through the mountain mist, illuminating the medical center with golden light. Within its walls, patients received ethical care. Research advanced with integrity. The vulnerable found protection rather than exploitation. Not a perfect world. There would always be those who chose profit over people, power over principles. But in this corner of the American frontier, Eleanor and Grant had created something that stood against the darkness, a beacon of what medicine could and should be. The flame once lit would not be extinguished so easily. They say healing comes from the most unexpected places, from the ashes of betrayal, from the ruins of broken dreams, from the courage to stand when every instinct screams to run. Eleanor Morgan didn't come to Silver Spring seeking justice. She came seeking redemption, a second chance in a world that had taken everything from her. Instead, she found her brother's unfinished legacy and the truth behind his silenced voice. The battle cost her blood, trust, innocence. The simple belief that medicine always serves the healing arts. Yet from this crucible of fire emerged something pure, a flame of ethical purpose that no corporate greed could extinguish. The scars remain visible and invisible. The network of corruption stretches beyond borders, beyond easy resolution. But so too does the light of those who refuse to let darkness prevail. Perhaps that's the true nature of healing, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. Not forgetting the wounds, but transforming them into wisdom. When the powerful build empires on human suffering, what will you choose? Comfortable silence, or the harder path of standing against the tide, carrying a flame that refuses to die?